So the next thing we're going to do is just set up the text for the actual event info. And what I want to do mainly here in this video at the beginning, because I'm going to do the same process where I walk through sort of the new concept and then I'm going to spend some time formatting my text. But what I want to do here is talk about how to align layers. So the first thing I want to do is just get my text in to my new text layer. So I'm going to click in here. I'm going to just type in the date. And I'm also going to right align this text because I am going to want it right aligned. I spent so much time getting this perfect. I'm going to want to use that line and follow it down my design. I'm going to put $5 doors. Then I put in the address. By the way, I totally made up that address. It's my birthday, and then Peach Pit is the publisher of the book. So we were just making things up. So if that's your address, I apologize for all the people showing up on April Fool's Day for a Gasoline Heart show at your house. And then the last thing you want to do is just put a little note in here that the promoter wanted, because there's an event in town and they want to sort of bring the people from the event in so they get a special sort of promotion. They get the roof access if they bring in their event pass. And that way they're trying to bring in more people that are going to be at this event, this big event that's happening in town at the same time, to come visit the show. And by giving them a bonus, that's one way to bring clients in. Just understanding some of those basic business practices can help you be a better designer as you give your client a tip that they hadn't thought of. If it works out well, that tends to give the client a really good feeling about your abilities as a designer. So I'm going to quickly just sort of drop this down. And our little scrub trick, by the way, works here too, where I can just scrub this text down. And I want to get it to basically be the size of that text there. And here I'm going to shrink this down even more. And let me just put in manually 12 here. And that's good enough, because what I really want to do at this point, I'm going to click commit to accept my changes. The main thing that I wanted to do in terms of new content is to help you guys learn how to align layers. So what I'm going to do is hold the shift key, and that allows me to select these two layers that are next to each other. The other way to do that is to hold the control key, it's command on the Mac, and that way you can select layers that are not right next to each other. So this is usually the key that I use, but I also know that when they're right next to each other, I can click on the top one, and then if I hold shift while I click on the bottom one, it selects everything in between. This also works in your OS, by the way. It's just kind of a good tip to know. But we just need these first two layers selected. You can select it either way. And here is the really important part to know. I'm going to choose my move tool. And look at these options that I have right here. I spent so much time making this perfect, this edge. I want to make sure that this text lines up with it. So what I'm going to do is just choose here to align the right edges of those two layers. And now they're perfectly lined up. The other thing that I could do is I could click on one layer and put it up here next to my guide, and then click the Gasoline Heart layer, get it right on the guide. And then I can select them both and then sort of move them around, and I've got that edge straight. But it's so much easier once I've got them selected to just use these tools. I can center them on each other. I can try to left align them. And you can see that it's aligning to the left edge now versus the right edge. And here I do the right edge. Occasionally, you'll click on these and you'll realize that you did the wrong one. Like I might try this one and I go, oh, geez, that's not what I wanted. No problem. You just Control or Command Z to undo. Get really familiar with that keyboard combination. It should become almost second nature to you. That's your oh no button, right? As soon as you go, oh no, or something else close to oh no, you just do Control or Command Z and undo that change. Make sure when you make a mistake, you use that undo feature really quick, because once you get too many steps away, it sometimes can be really difficult to correct that problem. So that's it for the basics. What I'm going to do now is walk through how I'm going to set up this type, just like I did in the last video. I'm going to perfect this. It's not as important since it's not a headline, so it's going to go much faster, but I do want to kind of make this design process obvious to you guys as I sort of walk through and make the decisions. I want to help you think about how to use these settings that we just learned about. So I'm going to go in here to my type tool. I'm going to just select this really quick. I want a little bit of space between those two lines, I felt like the dollar sign was a little too close. So I'm going to click OK. Sometimes I'll also just break this panel off and move it to the other side. You see now I can really see all of the content on my document, and this is not in the way anymore. So just moving it to the other side. Another one of the beautiful things of this very flexible interface, it's a little rough to get your mind around at the beginning when things move around and you accidentally drag them, but once you know how to use it, it's very helpful. So one thing that I'm noticing I'm not sure that I like is in here, because these are lowercase letters, I'm getting this open black area right here, and I don't know if I like it. It's sort of drawing my eye. That's called negative space. You'll learn about that in the design chapter. What happens if I make these letters all caps? Definitely hate it. Really hate it. It's just way too big, and it's competing now with my text up here. And again, this is sort of secondary information, so I don't spend as much time on all of this. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to bring the leading down just a little bit, and I'm going to do that same thing here with the leading. And again, this I'm doing just a lot faster because it's such a smaller area of type. One of the things that I don't like is how it's too dense because how we tightened up the text here. So I'm going to change this. Man, it still seems so off. Oh, geez, look, I've got my 149% horizontal scale. I'm going to drop that back to normal. There we go. Now it's looking much better. I was wondering why that looks so creepy to me. Okay, so now I am starting to really like this. Control T to transform. I'm going to stretch it up a little bit. Now I don't want to make it too big because then this becomes larger than my headline and it competes with it. I don't want that. I want this to be the obvious headline. So this text must remain smaller. And I'm probably going to just need to leave it just like that. I don't like how this text here is so much shorter than this. So I'm going to just line up these two lines so that they basically are about the same width. So I'm going to click my check mark here. And now I'm going to select this line. Click on the text tool. I'm going to select this line and I'm going to just change my type size. Oh, perfect. That happened to drop right into spot. Sometimes I get close and then I just manually affect it by hand because it's so sensitive sometimes. Okay, I actually got pretty close that time too. And now that means I need to change my leading just a little bit. So this process right now, a lot of designers would just type it in. Maybe they change the font size because this looks pretty nice, but this little bit of detail, changing the sizes of these options is really helping. Now it's kind of growing. It's kind of, this line is shorter than this one, and I'm kind of have this left edge sort of growing, but for some reason I like it. I'm not even going to try changing it. I'm going to just leave it there. I'm not sure why I like that, but I do. Normally I would try perfecting it, but I like it so much I'm not going to play with it. Now the last thing that I'm doing is I'm just looking at the space between this edge and this edge, and I'm trying to get it pretty much perfect. So I'm just trying to get that text pretty much right in there, and now I want to move my gasoline heart layer and get it lined up. By the way, these features here of that purple line that you're seeing pop up there, that's Photoshop telling me, hey, those two elements happen to be perfectly lined up. It's a really great feature. When it first came out, I didn't like it because I wasn't used to it, but I've learned to use them better, and now I like them. So that's it. Generally, I don't use the guides too much because setting things up perfectly numerically doesn't often translate to good design. So I tend to eyeball it and just sort of wait until it feels right to me. And over time and with practice, all of this stuff will become second nature, and you'll have a lot of fun just exploring the ways that you can communicate a different feeling by setting up type properly. So that's it. I hope you had a fun time listening to this stuff. Glad you stuck it through. You get to wear a special gold star today. And when anyone asks you, say, I have patience and I know how to design.